Hey everybody, welcome to the Ask Shy Show. Let me fix my camera here. It's been a little while since I've had the show running. Last episode was a few months ago, and I'm excited to be back on the mic and camera here and share some of the updates and awesome things that are going on in my world. So let's start off with one of the first things in mind and sort of just a quick update on where I am. I shared a post the other day about my background, the last 10 months, and how much fun I've had on this journey, and all the things I've learned. One of the things that I've had fun learning about is the founder's experience, right, and the challenges that founders face. It's something that I had been privy to throughout my career and journey in different roles as an outsider, getting to help and accelerate those startups. But having been deep down in the weeds and those thick of things at scale was something I really wanted to be able to achieve. And so that's been some of the fun stuff of the last 10 months. And one of the things that uncovered for me is really a lot of the challenges that founders face. It validated a lot of things that I found in the past. So I wanted to go through some of those today, share some of my perspectives, share some of the things I've noticed, and hopefully it helps some founders. If it's validation that you've faced these challenges yourself and you've struggled with these things, reach out to me via the links at the bottom here. I'm happy to talk about how we can accelerate and opportunities to accelerate there. It's a challenge that many founders face, so you're not alone. And if you've conquered these challenges and you feel like you've built a system or you've built some methodologies to help accelerate founders, please reach out as well. And I'd love to learn and see what others have built in this process. So the first one is really around the founding team, right? And building out that founding team and building out your resources. And what I'm gonna do just for fun to make sure I stay on track, I'll go ahead and set a 3-minute timer here for each of these topics. So you may hear the timer going off in a second. So for the first one is really about building your founding team, right? And thinking about those core resources. What you generally want to think about is what is the problem that you're trying to solve, right? And before we get to problem and the solution, all that stuff, you really want to try to hone in on that problem. And what your answer is going to be is, okay, who do I need to solve that problem? Generally, you need a developer, right? You need somebody that has the coding skills. You need somebody that has the business development and the product skills. And you need somebody that has the user experience and how the product should look and interact and behave, and can help with those resources on there. So when you think through that team, think through your development resources, right? Who you have helping you, who do you have helping you do development and coding? How much coding do you need to do? What are some of the specific skill sets that you may need for in that development and coding? And if you don't have that technical background yourself, which a lot of founders don't, that on its own can be a challenge, right? So maybe you know that your solution is likely a blockchain solution or a Web3 solution. That is fine, or you're going to solve your problem with blockchain Web3, but you're not doing that necessarily off the bat in the very initial first stages, right? And so if that is your goal, then yes, maybe you might want to hire a blockchain Solidity developer to get those things done. However, you have to make sure that the developer also has the skill sets for the traditional Web 2 development so that they can build a normal front end app, a normal back end application, a mobile development application. And it's better to actually have those skill sets separately. So it's better to find a traditional Web 2 developer that has really strong skill sets, right? Has that background in front end development. Maybe they have the skill sets in back end development, but they can show those skill sets. And then you find that honed in that specialist developer that you need. That's a better approach, because then what happens is the generalist developer that you have can have a good understanding of everything that's going on, and they will have a better idea than you as the founder as to exactly where they need that help. And so it's better to approach it that way. You end up getting the specialist help that you need, and maybe you don't need that specialist to be part of the core team necessarily. You may only need their help for, let's say, 2-3 months to develop a Solidity contract, and it makes more sense to bring them on as a freelancer or as a partner and pay them through a statement of work or something, rather than bring them on the core team, having to go through equity discussions, all the strategic discussions, all that stuff. And then in the end, it's not something that you necessarily want to be part of that core team. It's not something that you need necessarily long term, and you're looking for skill sets in other places. You just need them for a very specific area. So that's the first thing, right? Before we talk about the roles and stuff like that on the team, or the different types of team members, like advisors and stuff like that. It's important to think about those developers and those developer skill sets. The other part that I'll go into next, right, when you're thinking about building your core team, is really the business development side. Whether you're a product builder, you're a visionary, you're a technologist, you're anything else, if you don't have a really deep background in business development, what you struggle with, and what I've seen many founders struggle with, is the packaging part. So the ability to take an idea that they have and actually package that into something, right? And that packaging at the early stages is really about just how you communicate with a solution, right? We're not even talking about the interface design. We're not talking about the technology stack that's there. We're not talking about all those underlying and individual pieces and those components, right? All we're talking about is you have an idea, and can that idea be packaged up and presented and sold, right? If if you can't do that, and it's hard, it's very hard to go sit in front of Canva and or any other tool, and you're generally given the guidance from venture capitalists or accelerators. Here's the 10 slides that you need on the deck: your problem, your solution, your timing, market sizing, your roadmap, all this different stuff, and you're struggling. How do you package up this vision, this idea that you have in your head, that may be a multi-year vision, or maybe something that's very specific and granular, but how do you package that up in something that's very clear and concise? And the challenge also is that discussion around packaging is not a clear cut answer either, because the packaging is going to depend based on who you're packaging it for. So if you're packaging it for investors and they're technical investors, they are going to need to see a different package. If they are non and less technical investors, let's say outside of the blockchain Web3 world, that don't know about this space, they need to see a different perspective or a different package. If they're customers that you're pitching the solution to, that you're trying to get them on board as a partner to build with you, or to eventually be a somebody you're going to sell to them as a customer, you still need to think about what is that package that you're selling to them. And that packaging, it doesn't matter. I think if you're providing consulting services, you're providing a SaaS solution, you're providing anything, it's hard to know and think about how to package that. It's 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 an art to be able to do it for other people, right? And I think that's the expertise that some people bring, is that when they've been either in a specific industry that you're targeting and you have that solution for that specific industry, or they bring in broad expertise like myself across many different industries, right? The benefit of that tenure is the ability to have seen many things in the past, have seen what works and what doesn't work, and be able to shortcut a lot of those A/B testing to accelerate the product building itself and accelerate that packaging. The challenge though is that when you think about the packaging and how you're going to package up that solution, it's always a challenge to you always want to find somebody that can package that solution, but the best that can the on the tech side specifically, the ability to package up a solution for other people is great, but packaging a solution for oneself is much more difficult, right? And that's, to me, the kind of packaging that you want to find, because when somebody understands that they have something and they're a perfectionist, right? They're always going to want to clean that up because it's their own thing, right? They're always going to want to make that better. They're always going to make that better. So you see that drive. If you're isn't that drive to improve themselves, right? You don't see that curiosity or that desire from them to get better and improve in different areas and learn different things and try new things. And they sort of feel that they're a perfectionist in a sense. To me, that's not really business development, because then that means that the business has already been developed, it's already there. What more is there to do, right? And so I think that's the goal, is that you want to make sure that you're working with people that understand that perfection is a goal, but it's not a realistically attainable goal today. It's something that you're working towards over time, and it's just a challenging thing to achieve in life as a whole, right? When do you achieve that perfection? I don't believe it's until you die. So um, I think that's the important part, right? Is find the people that will help you push that vision forward. All right, let's keep going. The timer's keeping me on track here. Next one is really around delegation and autonomy. There's a really there's a very deep thought around, or a lot of noise, if you will, and it's been around for about last year since ChatGPT came out, and then all the tools that are built on top of ChatGPT that give you the concept of this solo entrepreneur, right? You can do marketing, you can do business development, you can do customer outreach, you can do um, build your business plan, you can build your tokenomics model, you can build this, right? They give you all these different AI tools that allow you to do all these different things. The challenge is that as a founder, there's two parts of that problem. One is the cost of those tools. Each of those tools is somewhere between $15 to $40 easily for just a single user license. You start bringing on, let's say you have another 3 people with you that are building. It's another $15, $20 per person, right? Easily, these tools are like $100 for a small team, and none of them do everything at once, right? And the ones that offer to do everything at once just give you a high level and they give you a good starting point, and then you really have to use some other specialized tools to dig into those things, right? Even like the article writing tools as an example, right? There's tools out there that claim to write the article, the tweets, the LinkedIn posts, everything else around it as well. They do all of it okay. They don't do any one of it really well, right? And again, we've seen this in tech all the time, right? The more you take on, the less you do well at one thing and the better you do at everything. So the challenge is, one is on the cost of tools. I've easily seen the ability on my own side as well to run up quite a tab of a couple $100 in a month of just AI tools that you're trying, and it's like, hey, this works. This helps with the business planning, and it helps with market research. It helps with the research papers and analysis. It helps with marketing, copywriting development. It helps with lead generation and lead filtering, and financial projections and all this stuff. They're all great tools, but you run up a huge tab. The other part that's the really big problem, is that they don't encourage that delegation, right? The challenge is you're not using a lot of these tools, and you're also supposed to be building a team. You're supposed to be building people around you that are going to support you and going to build you out. And the concept of a solo entrepreneur can only last so long, right? If you're building a micro SaaS solution and it only does one little thing, you charge a very small amount of money. Sure, that can work for a little while and you can get away with it. And I've seen a few people that have multiple SaaS solutions under the belt. However, that's like the 1 or 4% at most. That's not the majority of people. So the challenge I think is to remember that you have to delegate as well as that autonomy, right? And the AI tools give you the autonomy so that you can venture down paths that maybe you don't have that expertise in, right? So before you go delegate a marketing task, as an example, maybe you do some of that additional market research yourself. And because you have the AI tools to do so, you can get to a higher level, right? You're able to do a lot more depth before you hand it over to somebody else to then do the further in-depth market research, right? And so that's the important part, is to understand that delegation is balanced with autonomy. Do a little bit to get yourself ahead and then hand it over to somebody else so that they can then help you out and you can move on to the other things, many things that you have to do as a founder. So the the next part comes in that founder journey, right? Building your team, that delegation autonomy. Well, who are you delegating to? You have to put together your team of advisors and you have to put together your team of regular contributors. Now, I give credit to Tsunami here for laying out a really good picture around regular contributors versus one-time contributors and community and how they come together. I love the model that they present as well. And the my perspective of looking at things, advice. They are people that you go out to get suggestions, right? You tell them, hey, I'm doing all these things. I'm doing this. I'm doing this. I'm building that, this, there, right? What do I need to do, right? And they their goal, and they should help you find the shortcuts because they've been in this industry for a long time. They've done those certain things, right? Maybe it's your business development advisor, and they've been in business development for a long time, and so they can tell you, no, you know what, you're focusing on the bigger picture too much. You need to focus on these specific things today. You need to go get a statement of work done. That's your priority. Get that done today, or get that done this week or this month. Get a template done, right? They're very good at telling you what to do. They're giving you advice, and it's up to you as a founder whether you want to take that advice or not. That's an important thing to understand, and it's an important relationship to have with your advisors. They are advisors. They do not tell you what to do. They advise you on what to do. An advisor that tells the team what to do and comes in there with a very direct approach and says, this is what you guys need to do, can derail an entire project, right? Because the challenge is that a lot of founders and teams will look at that advisor and say, okay, well, they have tenure, they have network, they have expertise in this space, they know these things. If I do what they're saying, they will help me out. They will hopefully connect me. They will open up their doors to me. And way too often that is not the case, right? Way too often you're playing a game of moving goalposts with these advisors because their goalposts are also moving, right? Their career and the network that they build and the expertise that they build is also moving. So at the same time that you're building and you're trying to appease their network and their broader perspective, they are also in themselves trying to grow and take on bigger challenges and bigger things too. So you have to balance out what it is that you're expecting of your advisors as well, and making sure that you're also challenging them, right? And that you're listening to what they're sharing, but you're also respectfully challenging because you're giving them an opportunity as well. Especially if you're giving up equity, um, it's very nice to get equity for just being able to give advice. You don't have to actually do anything. You just have to show up for a call. You give your advice, and you get equity, right? It's quite a luxurious role to be in. Um, if you're in that role, it means that the people that you have on board really value you, right? They value what you say. So you have to make sure that as an advisor, you're supporting through intrinsic motivation. You're not trying to convince and tell people what to do because it's not about you, right? You're not building your own product. You're an advisor for them. So you have to understand what inspires them. How do you help them achieve what they want to do? And what are those things that motivate them? It's very hard, right? But that's the way that it should be. And if you're a founder and you have advisors in your circle that do that, right, that you can tell are actively looking for ways to help you, right? Maybe they're bringing in contacts, maybe they're bringing in um, people of their network, right? They're actively taking an approach to help you out. They're not just telling you that document has spelling mistakes or typos. They are actually going in there and they are making the changes, right? They're not just saying, hey, this paragraph doesn't look well, or they're not just judging um, by the first details that they see and say, hey, things need to be changed here. They actually go in there and they make comments on the document, right? And even furthermore, right, and this is where it gets into the regular contributor side. So let me put more time there. So when you have that advisor that is actually jumping in and now they are editing the document, they are giving you suggestions about how to reword that. They're not just saying this needs to be reworded. They're saying reword it in this way, right? And here's a couple of things to get you started, right? Whether it's the text, whether it's the images, that's where they start to becoming more regular contributors, right? They're actually contributing to things. If they're bringing other people from the network, if they're in a business development role, well, then that is part of the contribution, right? So it depends what the role is. You have to really understand what the role is. But most of the advisor type of roles, you're not going to have them in an active business development role, right? They're going to be there looking to give you advice, and they're going to help you move along. The regular contributors are the ones that are there and are actively working with you every day or every week, even maybe it's once a week for an hour or two. But in that hour or two that they're there, they're not just listening and giving advice. They're saying, hey, you know what? I've gone ahead and listened to you last time. I've gone ahead and done these few things on there. Do you agree with these changes? Is this something that you support? Do you like what we've done or what I've done? That is the regular contributor, right? So you have your advisors, you have your regular contributors, and you have your core team. And the important part is that this regular contributors is the pool of people that are actively there with you. I said I'm borrowing this from the tsunami, and I love the way that they put it. Um, the 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 they're the people around you that want to see the success of your project, and they want to be there and they want to be part of what you're building, but they're not quite part of the core team, right? They're not making the active decisions every day. They're not part of the ins and outs and all the single weeds, right? They don't have that broad perspective as the core team across the entire product and the different parts of the business and the product as well, right? They're a regular contributor because they're on a very specific thing. Maybe it's that blockchain developer, maybe it's the AI developer, maybe it's a linguistics or communications expert, maybe it's a marketing expert, right? If they're actually doing things, right? If they're creating templates for you, if they're creating designs in Canva and stuff like that, then they are a regular contributor. They're not an advisor, right? An advisor is the one that sits back and says, hey, I know this person, I know that, we can do this, we can do these things. The regular contributor is the one that actually does them. So the next part after that, that's a slight differentiation, I'll wrap, is the one-time contributor. You're going to have, as founders, people that want to jump in and out, want to contribute to what you're doing, and then they have other things to do, right? They have other businesses, other projects, other things they're working on, and they don't necessarily have the time to stick around for a long time, right? They want to help in a very specific area, and then they want to go ahead and jump out and get out of that help as soon as they can. That's also very great and very helpful, and you want to make sure that you're thinking of those one-time contributors and where there's sometimes help that you need in a one-time sense. Lead scraping and lead generation is a great example, right? If you're trying to figure out who is your target market, who do you need to go after, what do those customers look like, what is the pitch to those customers, right? You're kind of just trying to set that up, and that's all they're going to do, and they're going to help you set that up. Then they're a one-time contributor there, right? They're contributing to that effort, and then as soon as they've given you what they've given to you, they're going to back off. Now, if they're going to go ahead and also, let's say, execute on that, and it's only a one-time contribution, again, let's say over 3 months, and you're kind of talking about it, and you're like, okay, this is our goal for the next month or two. I want you to do this. Go ahead and do that. That is much more of a one-time contributor, right? That's not a regular role that they're doing. Now, if you're saying, hey, I want you to do that, but we're going to do that, on a quarterly basis, and I want you to take more initiative, and I want you to, help guide us on the things that we need to do as well, right? Then you're asking for more regular contribution, and then they are a regular contributor, and they also should be ready to contribute at that level too, right? Where they are taking that stewardship and the ownership. If they're just kind of sitting back and waiting for things, then they're more a one-time contributor, right? If that's the difference between an advisor and a one-time contributor, right? The advisor is waiting, and they're going to jump in, they're going to give you advice. The one-time contributor is going to sit back and wait, and then they're going to jump in, they're going to do something, right? And then they might go away for a while, and then they might come in and jump in and do something, right? So you want to gauge between who are the one-time contributors versus the regular recurring contributors. All right, let me move on to the last part here, and then we'll wrap up I'll give myself 5 minutes on this. Well, 3 minutes on this one. I'm just going to check on LinkedIn or YouTube. We'll see if there's any questions that came in. And for anybody that catches the stream or joins late, the goal really of the Ask Shy show is I jokingly call it the Ask Shy, right? The idea of playing on my first name there. The whole idea and my goal of this show is really to have fun over every Friday session, hopefully, if not every other Friday. Talk about topics like blockchain, machine learning, and AI, and the intersection of the three. Talk about the challenges that I'm facing as a builder myself, and the customers I work with, and the clients I work with. Share the stories that are out there that I hear every day in this space as well, and also just share the exciting innovation that's also in the space, right? All the cool stuff that happens on a recurring basis that we see in this space. So let me. Oh, there you go. Just checking the stream there. All right. So if there's any of the questions, anything comes in, if you're watching this over the live stream and stuff, please do not hesitate to reach out or ask any questions in the chat, or reach out over LinkedIn, Twitter. All those links are all down here on the bottom. You can reach out via any of those, and I will happily try to answer my best. Let me try and go to the YouTube studio so I can double check the comments. Let's see. All right. Let's see if there's any questions that came in. Okay. Let me keep going here while I bring that up. So that's the couple of stuff I wanted to talk there. Let me put the timer on one last time, and we'll keep going down the list here. Um, the other the other challenge I find a lot of founders facing is this idea of building full time versus as a side project, right? Um, should they take this on their own? Do they build this on their own, or do they go and try to do this on the side while they're working? The first thing is you have to know if it's a conflict of interest with your current employer or not. That's the first issue, right? If it's not a conflict of interest and your employer is not going to have an issue with it, you can openly talk. Ideally, right? You can openly talk with your leadership about it and say, hey, this is a passion project I'm building on the side, and it's something I'm curious about. I'm learning, I'm researching, I'm trying to find out what I'm doing. I'm writing some code, I'm testing some stuff out. And you have that open discussion, and it doesn't interfere with your day-to-day work. There should be no reason why you can't start it, right? An employer should be excited to have somebody that has that entrepreneurial spirit, and somebody that wants to dig into things and figure stuff out on their own, wants to build that community, wants to have validation, is looking for those challenges, right? That's actually a good thing. An employee, you don't want just a robot. And if you do, well, then why are you hiring somebody? Pay the AI tool or whatever machine software you have to do that. Don't hire people, right? So the the challenge. So the ideal world is if you can build it as a side project. Ideally, right? If your employer knows about it, they're aware what's going on, right? You should share as much as you can share, right? To have a good relationship with your employer, right? Don't do things that are going to threaten your employment. I do get, right, a lot of people have the perspective of, I need a plan B. No corporate job is secure. I certainly know that myself. So I get it. I get the idea of having a plan B, and I get the idea of building in stealth. And I've worked with plenty of startups that build in stealth, and that's fine. Um, the only challenge is at some point you need to come out of that stealth phase, right? You need to come out, and the question is when. So you need to have that in mind, right? As to when you need to come out of stealth. What is it going to take for you to come out of stealth? Is that process going to distract you from your day-to-day job, or is that something that you can still deliver on your 8 hours? If you can deliver on your, forget the hours, if you can deliver on your requirements of your day job in however long it takes you, then by all means, you should go doing something else as well, right? Again, so long as it's not conflicting, you're not stealing customers from the first one, right? Don't do stupid stuff like that, obviously. But that's the ideal way, right? That's the best way to do things, is when you can approach it in a side project like that. Building on a full-time basis, right? Where you've taken a leap of faith, this product that you're building is your dream, and you're going to dedicate everything that you can and go build it out. I've been on that path myself as well. It's a challenge. It's not a fun place to be, and I've seen a lot of founders veer off on their vision and what they want to build because their food's on the line, right? They know your timing. They know that they have, that's not dinner, but they know that the food's on the line, and so they have to work and have that on their head, and there's always this dichotomy or trichotomy of, okay, am I focusing on the finance part? Am I building the product? Am I focusing on the stability of the future of what I'm trying to build and the long-term vision, right? And so it becomes a real struggle, and there's a challenge there of how do you balance that if this is what you're building full time, when your livelihood is on the line. And this doesn't matter if you're a founder, a solo founder, you're a single founder out of school, maybe you're still in school, university, or you're in college, or you're out of college and you maybe you now have kids after many years, or you're like me, you're in 41 and you have 4 kids. It doesn't matter. Nobody should be having to sleep on a couch and eat ramen while they're building the next big product, right? Whatever. If you're building the next, Windows OS, or you're building the next OpenAI, or building the next NVIDIA, Amazon, whatever you want to call it, none of those got there in like 6 months to a year. They all took a long time to get there. And so what are you really benefiting by sacrificing your life in the long term? Sorry, what are you sacrificing your life short term that is actually beneficial in the long term, right? Is this sacrifice that you're doing of not eating healthy, not sleeping in a healthy state where you have a regular bed over your head, you're traveling, you're moving around everywhere, right? Things are not consistent. Maybe that's conducive to what you're doing and that's fine, but if you're doing it because you're able to, that's okay. If you're doing it because you have to move because you can't afford things, that's not a good place to be in, right? And you don't want to be a founder in that space, and investors don't want to invest in people in that space. But yet, investors, and we'll talk about venture capitalists in a moment, still expect that. They expect that people are either going to build this side as a side project, or they're going to build it full time. And if they're going to build it full time, in some cases, they're going to eat ramen noodles and sleep on their couch until the product is built out. And again, I disagree with that, right? You don't want a builder that is in that mindset. You want a builder that is in a nice, healthy mindset, right? If they're living cost efficiently and they're living a very cost effective life, great. That's wonderful. If they're happy, that's the life that they need to live. They know that apartment, that unit's going to be there for the next 12 months or next 18 months. They know that their family that they have with them is going to be taken care of, that they have food, income coming in for food, and all that stuff is stable for the next 12 to 18 months. That's what you want. You don't want a founder, or you don't want to build in a situation where you're constantly scrapping for your life as well as scrapping for your own business. You can't scrap in both. It's not healthy. So, and it doesn't work. Let me pause for a second. And all right, we'll move on to the next one here. Just trying to see if any. So the next challenge is really the stage of where a product is in, or a founder is in, right? A lot of founders struggle with the challenge of what stage are they actually in today, right? There's the pre-seed, there's the seed stage, and there's a series A, right? We're just talking about early stage startups and early stage build outs, right? So in the pre-seed, it's kind of what's referred to as the friends and family stage, right? You're in the early building, you're trying to validate the idea, you have something in your head, you don't have any customers yet, you just have this idea, and maybe you have, I would say, like, maybe you have a customer or two at most, right? But they're not actually using the product, they're validating the problem, right? And that's important, the validation of the problem. So you have problem validation, but you're trying to do market research, you're trying to understand the team that you need to put together, you're trying to understand the architecture you need to put together. Your main goal is customer acquisition. It's not customer retention, right? So in the pre-seed, you're all about what things do I need to do in order to reach that customer acquisition stage. So once you reach that customer acquisition stage, the seed stage then becomes about customer retention. Now you're asking yourself, okay, how much capital do I need to build more of the product so I can retain my existing customers, right? I need to scale out. I need to expand into markets. I need to reach other partners in the ecosystem, reach other builders, other segments in the ecosystem, right? All this business development stuff that happens in that seed round stage when you're trying to close your seed round, right? And pre-seed's usually somewhere around the 250 to 500,000. Seed round can be anywhere between $1 million to, let's say, 2.5 million, and then Series A could be 4-ish to like 10. Just depends on the size, and depends over valuations and the investment vehicles and all these things, right? But that's the general numbers. And so at the seed round, what you're mostly looking at is, okay, I have some of the product already built. I've acquired customers. Ideally, they're using the product. There's people in there. I can show investors, I can show other customers via testimonials, via real world data, right? Hey, my product has this much data already. We've gone through these many customers and it's producing these kind of results out there. Maybe it's a video creation tool, and you can show how many clips it's created, how many times they've been shared, right? That's the important part of that seed round. It's that customer retention, and now you're working on that customer retention and holding those customers back, or retaining those customers and keeping them in there. So you have to, as a founder, understand what stage you're in. And if you don't have a product in the market and you don't have people actively using it that are not your friends and family, right? It's like it's not in a private closed state. It's out there and it's being used. You're not really in that seed stage yet, right? And that's the challenge that a lot of founders have with investors is like, when am I ready for the seed stage? How much of the product do I need to develop in order to get to that seed stage, right? I can get out of that early stage process. So the important part is during that early stage to focus on what it is that you're building and how do you get to a state where you can focus on customer retention and you can go to investors and say, hey, we've already acquired customers. Now we're just trying to focus on how to keep them here, right? That's the pre-seed stage and the seed stage. And then you get to the Series A, and that's really about the larger expansion. You've acquired your customers. You now know how to retain those customers. Now you're trying to usually acquire the next batch of customers, right? That's either through other segmentation, trying to move into other markets and other segments, or new features in the product to bring in additional users that you weren't able to bring on early on because you didn't develop those out yet. So figure out what stage you're in, figure out where you're getting your investing in your funds and all those things. And speaking of the funds and grants, let's go into those real quick. When you've figured out what stage you're in, and you're in that pre-seed stage, maybe you're in the seed stage, there are lots of funding options. Venture capitalists are not the only one. We'll talk about why they're called vulture capitalists in many circles. It's not the only option, right? There's grants. There are customers that you can go out to, right? So maybe you find a customer that wants to buy the solution that you're building in the future, right? They're also part of your validation set. They're validating the problem. If they can be the customer that buys that solution in the future, maybe they can also invest as well, right? That sometimes can happen, and you can sell that into the customer. It's a challenge, but you can. Sometimes it is a long sales cycle, but the benefit is that they may bring in other investors with them. So if you are selling a particular solution, let's say an interviewing solution to an HR company, and the company is looking at that solution, they want to build it and they want to deploy it, they will likely have investors in their circle that have helped them build their own company, and they may bring in those investors to help you build that product out. So you don't know what options are there, right? You may go into it thinking that it's a licensing only model, it's a revenue share model. That's great. It may turn out to be an investment opportunity. It may turn out to be an acqui-hire opportunity where you get the attention of, let's say, if they're private equity as an example, the private equity firm may even be interested in hiring the team that's building the solution before the solution's even been built, to get that exclusivity. So there's lots of options there. The grants and crowdfunding go together. Grants are really great. You have to understand where you're getting that grant funding from. You have to make sure that's not coming with any strings attached to it. A lot of grants require that projects are open sourced. Generally, that's fine. But if you have an issue with that and you don't want to share your information, you may be limited from the amounts of grants that you can join. However, that's also being said, grants come from many different places. So there's ecosystem grants in the blockchain Web3 world. Those are going to be your layer 1, your layer 2s, your developer tooling, right? You can think about anybody that would benefit financially from you building on their platform is going to be incentivized to have a grant program to bring you onto their platform, right? It's the same thing with any cloud provider. They don't give credits away for free, because the knowledge is that what happens, you get free credits, and then the next year when you run out of those credits, well, you haven't optimized because you've been using the free environment and you're happy with where you are, and now you're left with a bill. So they all know this, right? It's a loss leader. It's kind of like, you think about the PlayStation, Xbox, Nintendo, right, selling the console at a loss because they know that that's the loss leader, and the games are really where the money's to be made. So you have to think through that in the grants program. The crowdfunding, I think is always a hit or miss. Right? You go to Kickstarter, Indiegogo, there's WeFunder, and there's a whole bunch of other like crowdfunding related type sites, depending on what it is you're trying to do. I and also I'll throw in there as well, like donations, right? So if you're doing like a GoFundMe, Give Butter, like I did as an example, it's a real challenge because you have to appease to people's heart and you have to appease to intrinsic motivation, right? You're inspiring people to buy into a product before it's ever been released and before they've even touched the product yet. And unless you have a proven track record, as far as the team goes and a company, you're appealing to their emotions, right? Their emotions are the path to them buying and purchasing the product and committing the dollar amounts to the product, right? The project. In most cases, they can, up until the last end, withdraw that support. So you're always in this cycle of appealing to their emotion through intrinsic motivation, and it's hard. It's a very challenging thing if you're also trying to be, in a way, be stealth and a bit coy about what you're trying to build because you don't want to release any secret sauce or IP. How do you balance that with appeasing to their emotions? It's hard. It's not impossible. It's just hard. And the better the foundations of the product is, right? The better the branding, the better the story, the how the team came together, how the product was built out, right? The how, the why there is more important than the how, right? Like you don't have to talk and tease about the how, but it's the why, right? The why is what appeals to people and what gets that emotional motivation that we really want. So you have to appeal to that in the crowdfunding campaigns. And if you don't, and it's a for profit product, it doesn't work. It's just really hard, right? So you have to think through that very well. All right, let's move on to thank you, everybody. If you've hung on this far in the stream, if you've watched the content, thank you again. Again, this is a show I'm running every week to talk about my fun trials and tribulations in the startup and Web3 blockchain machine learning world. With a bit of AI there. I'm not chasing the AI hype. I just have to put it in the title because it does really well with SEO. Plus, also, it's half my name. So the next part is going to be around. Let's get into. Let's actually get. I'll touch on the vulture capital a little bit before I move on to the next part. So I mean, no offense to anybody that is a venture capitalist. If you're a venture fund, no offense again. This is there is a common phrase that's referred to as a vulture capital, right? A vulture capitalist. Now, this doesn't mean that every venture capitalist is this way. It doesn't mean that every venture fund is this way. There are certainly lots of great VCs and lots of great funds and lots of great accelerators and awesome people behind those. I have those in my network. I get to talk to those awesome people. However, there are a lot of vultures, right? And what I mean by vultures is and I would akin it to this way, right? The vulture is interested in the ramen. They're looking for those people that are on the couch because those people on the couch are eating ramen are easy targets and they can steal the ramen from them, right? And if you have an investor in your circle that is only looking at what you're building today and only wants to know what is there today and what is the immediate return and doesn't care about anything else, then they may be a vulture capital, right? They may be somebody that is just looking for a quick win. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying necessarily it's a bad thing. There are plenty of opportunities and reasons why that's actually a good thing. If you have a very specific product, if you have a very niche product that does one or two things and it does it very well, and you can go to market with those one or two things, and you can clearly articulate what those one or two things are, and you need capital to do so, those types of venture capitalists or vulture capitalists are great, right? Because they have tunnel vision, they're scoped into just that ramen, they can only see that thing in front of them, they'll invest in it, and generally they'll stay out of your way, right? They'll let you build what you want to build because they understand what you want to build. So they do certainly have their place. But if you're a founder and you're still figuring out your idea, right? You're still trying to figure out what you're building. Your thing has multiple pieces to it and different parts to it all over the place. And it's a complex architecture. It's a complex product that you're building out. It's going to take you multiple years to build it out. If the first impressions you're getting back from a venture capitalist is, you know, there's a lot here. I don't know where to start, and this is too big. There's two issues. One, I think you honestly ask yourself, right? Have you honed into the problem? Again, I'm guilty of that in the past, right? It's very easy to talk about, hey, these are all the things I want to solve. I want to solve these, 6 or 7 big different problems. And then a venture capitalist comes back and says, well, hey, they're too big. You need to come back, right? Again, that's not a vulture, right? They're giving you feedback. They're saying, hey, you're taking on too much. There's a lot here. You need to get more honed in, right? So they're helping you. They're not telling you, oh, come. For example, if they tell you come back when you figured out what you want to build, or come back when things are cleaned up, then they're vulture capital, right? They don't care to take the time to understand that. If they're there and they're part of that process and they're asking and offering to help and they have teammates that are offering to help, they're not a vulture capital, right? They're venture capitalists and they are seeing that your product is not ready for an investment yet. It doesn't mean that your product is not ready for market yet. It just means it's not ready for investment yet. It means that it's difficult to articulate the return on value to other investors, right? And not many investors are willing to put capital behind something that doesn't have customer acquisition yet. Again, in the early stages, and doesn't have that clear path to return on investment, right? So your investors that are going to be in there for the long term, that understand that, are far and few between, right? There's not many of those, right? There's the vultures on the very far end, that there's a few of them, and then you have the other far end, that's the long-term investors that understand the long-term perspective, and then you have the general ones in the middle, right? And the general ones in the middle are the ones that you're trying to cater for. So you want to have a honed in message. You want to focus on the problem, right? And that's the last part I wanted to focus on here before I move on to some fun stuff and we'll wrap it up. You want to focus on the problem. You want to make sure that you're not easily swayed by all the myriad of solutions that could be out there, and you don't get married to one solution. What you don't want to happen is that you're married to a particular solution, and it doesn't mean that it's a technical solution. It's not like you're saying in your head, oh, this is going to be an NFT marketplace, or this is going to be an AI chatbot. You're married to the way that you're going to solve that problem, right? We're going to conquer this because we're going to use large language models. We're going to use these tools. We're going to do that. We're going to do this, right? It in the gaming world, what ends up happening when you do that, when you're developing a game, is it takes away from the content. You end up having really good game mechanics, but you have a really crappy game story. Nobody wants to play the game because it's boring after like the first 2 or 3 levels, because the mechanics are awesome and the story sucks. So it's the same thing in the product, right? If you focus so much on the mechanics part and you don't focus on the product itself, then you end up in those situations. And so you want to make sure that you're honed in there. Let's move on to. Oh, I'll wrap it up with one of my favorite phrases I've picked up over the last 10 months or so. Right, you as a founder have an idea. You focus on your problem. You identify your problem. You know what you're going to build, and a venture capitalist comes and they poop on your cake. If that happens, that's a good opportunity to ask yourself, is that cake really the solution, or did you present the problem? Because generally what will happen, the pooping on the cake, or the tearing apart of your idea, what you're trying to build, is not a criticism of the problem, right? They're not criticizing you as a founder and saying, hey, you're not identifying the right problem, right? This problem that you're so passionate about is wrong. That's not it. What they're saying is that the solution, the way that you've gone upon it, doesn't make sense to them. It doesn't mean that it's wrong either. It just means that they don't understand why you've gone from the problem, or they don't understand the how you've gone from that problem to that solution, right? They don't see that connection between the two. So you have to do that work to help them understand that. I mean, it's challenging and it's hard, and it's something that we have to work on with investors and the community and everybody else. All right, I'm at the 50-minute mark. I'll wrap up with some fun stuff. In my sort of downtime and in between things, I love to get engaged with different things. The Temporal Tides is the product I launched on Patreon. It's really just my fun exploration into a concept of storytelling around time and what happens when people are on different timetables or different time schedules. I've always loved the idea of telling stories, and I've had different narratives and story and ideas in my head around characters with mental health challenges and the way that they perceive time around them. Somebody that has ADHD, for example, things maybe move very fast, and then they thrive in they thrive in those kind of environments. Whereas somebody with ADD tends to be very laser focused and can thrive in an environment of a lot of anonymity and ambiguity, right? Whereas somebody with ADHD doesn't do very well in those environments. And so I take those ideas. Another paper I was working on for a while, which I'll get back to, is something called the accountability and anonymity. I'm fascinated by this idea of how do you keep people anonymous, but also hold them accountable. You can't just willy-nilly do things in this world and expect that there's no implications, right? There's always going to be consequences. Um, the question is just how do you hold people accountable in that state? A very simple example of this is you think about the camping experience in rural camping. It's really cool to go to a campground that is in a very rural area. You're very far apart from other campers. You get to be in nature. You get to be in peace, enjoy yourself there. But nobody technically knows that you're there because you're off-grid camping. Right? Sometimes you just drop a couple dollars in the bin in the beginning there, and you just put the general area that you're in. So you're off-grid. You can maintain that anonymity within the limits. Obviously, there's probably cameras and certain entry points and stuff like that, so you're not completely anonymous. But in general, right, you can maintain that anonymity there, right? Let's say that. But there's also the need for accountability, right? You have to clean up after yourself. You have to make sure that the environment is ready for the next person afterwards. So how do you hold people accountable and allow them to be anonymous? And again, there's different levels of anonymity, either full anonymity, right? We don't know who anybody else is at all. There's pseudonymity where they portray somebody as anonymous externally, but if you do the work, you can dox them and find out who they are. They're not hiding it necessarily. It's not like you're doxing them and revealing their secrets. Um, so I think I've always wondered a fun way and interesting way to explore these concepts of what a future society would look like in these kind of environments. How do you have a totalitarian government that wants to control everything and wants to own everything? And then how do you also have a government that wants to be free and allow the people to do whatever they want? And you have a government that's somewhere in the middle, right? Now, again, this is not new. We have government models today that we can look at. Finland is a great example of a socialist government. Um, US, North Korea, Venezuela, Iran, examples of countries that are still trying to figure it out. Um, so I think that's the challenge is like, so we look at these future worlds and we look at the challenges of the current societies, and the fun part is looking in the future of like how are we going to move to these future worlds? How are we going to get to these stages? So I have some ideas there. I've been playing around for a while, and I really enjoy this idea of presenting these stories and these ideas through the concept of a game, where also these ideas of, for example, a mixed reality future, a future where we're already seeing it today. People are walking with their Apple Vision Pros in the middle of the street in Manhattan or somewhere, and people have been doing with augmented reality glasses for a while, where they're living a mixed reality world. But what if that was commonplace? So I just want to continue exploring these futuristic worlds and these ideas that I've seen as a kid watching sci-fi movies and shows, and I've also seen them in stuff today, and I want to continue exploring those worlds. And so the idea of the temporal tides is to explore those characters, those ideas, that story in a game world. Probably going to be focusing a lot on the story part first, and then eventually we'll get into more of the technology side. Right, the tech will come at the end when the mechanics are there. The fun part that I have is the understanding I have of the technology allows me in the game to start thinking about different mechanics and ways to use the mechanics in the game as well. So it's a fun dichotomy that I can live. But the challenge, and what I've been warned about by a lot of game developers, is you don't want the mechanics or the infrastructure driving the content. The content should drive, right? You have to have a good story there. So I'm doing what I can to make sure that there's a solid storyline, a good path, and the mechanics that are part of it are adding value to that story, right? That story can now be told in a very cinematic in a very creative and clever way, because we're doing it in the sense of a puzzle telling, and the colors in that scene are slowly fading away into a black and white environment. The scene is vignetting away into an only like everything is turning black except that middle part there. Um, Lots of really cool ways to visualize what goes on in people's heads when they have the mental health abilities that I like to talk about, things like anxiety, depression, psychosis, autism, right? These are all abilities and superpowers that people have. And I want to show that there's a way to have to leverage those as abilities. And I think that there's awesome ways to visually tell those as well in the game. So we're at the top of the hour. Follow along on the Patreon link. I'll go ahead and put the link somewhere in the chat in the future there. But follow along with Patreon, follow me along on LinkedIn, and enjoy the rest of the journeys. I hope to entertain everybody. I hope people have fun on these sessions. If there's any questions that I missed, if there's any other questions that you want answered as part of this show, please do drop a line. I'm looking forward to publishing more often and creating more content. And so if you want to see anything in particular, please do let me know. Otherwise, I love you all, and thank you again for joining. This has been a blast, and see you all next time.